A mystery that lived in silence. The basement was cold. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver, but the kind that settles into your bones and stays there, silent, patient, waiting. Detective Mark Holloway stood at the top of the stairs, his polished shoes catching the dim light from the single bulb overhead. He had seen crime scenes before. Too many. But this was different. The call had come in at 11:47 p.m. A neighbor reported screaming. When officers arrived at the modest suburban home, they found the front door unlocked, the living room untouched, and a trail of scattered toy blocks leading down to the basement. And there she was. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, sitting on the cold concrete floor. Her leg was wrapped in makeshift bandages, torn pieces of what looked like an expensive red dress. Tears streaked her face, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was just staring. Standing over her was a woman in that same red dress, or what remained of it. Her hair was disheveled, her bare feet dirty, her eyes wild with something Mark couldn't quite name. Fear, desperation, or something deeper. "Ma'am," Mark called out softly, descending one step. "I'm Detective Holloway. Are you okay?" The woman's head snapped toward him, and for a moment, he saw it, a flicker of relief, then terror, then something else entirely. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The little girl spoke instead. "Please, Mommy," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Help me. It's broken." The questions that had no answers. Mark had separated them, standard protocol. The woman, who identified herself as Catherine Mercer, sat in the living room now, wrapped in a blanket provided by the paramedics. The girl, Emma, was being examined upstairs. "Mrs. Mercer," Mark began, sitting across from her. "Can you tell me what happened tonight?" Catherine's hands trembled as she clutched the blanket tighter. I was trying to help her." "Help her how?" "She fell. She was playing, and she fell down the stairs. Her leg, I think it might be broken. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. I used my dress to wrap it because I couldn't find. I couldn't." Her voice trailed off, and she looked away. Mark studied her carefully. Everything she said made sense on the surface. But something felt wrong. The basement was too clean. Too staged. And those blocks, they were arranged in a pattern, almost deliberately placed. "Mrs. Mercer, why didn't you call 911 immediately?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I was going to. I swear I was. But Emma, she kept saying something strange. She kept saying, 'Don't let them take me.' I didn't understand. I thought maybe she was in shock." Mark leaned forward. "Take her where?" Catherine's face crumbled. "I don't know. The truth hidden in shadows." Upstairs, the paramedic came down with a puzzled expression. "Detective, you need to hear this." Mark followed her up to Emma's room, where the little girl sat on her bed, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Her leg was indeed fractured, but it was an old injury, at least 3 days old, maybe more. "Emma," Mark said gently, kneeling beside her. "Can you tell me what happened? The truth this time." Emma's lip quivered. "Mommy told me not to tell." "Why?" "Because." She looked toward the door, as if checking to make sure they were alone. "Because he'll take us away." Mark's chest tightened. "Who will take you away?" "The man. The man who comes at night. The man who wasn't there." A full investigation was launched. Mark discovered that Catherine Mercer was a single mother. Her husband had died 3 years ago in a car accident. She worked 2 jobs to keep the house, to keep Emma in a good school, to maintain the appearance of normalcy. But beneath that surface, there were cracks. Catherine had been seeing a man named Richard Voss, a wealthy businessman who had promised to help them, to take care of them. But Richard had a dark side. He was controlling, manipulative. He had threatened Catherine repeatedly. If she didn't do exactly as he said, he would report her to Child Protective Services, claim she was an unfit mother, and take Emma away from her. The night of the incident, Emma had indeed fallen down the stairs, but not by accident. She had been running from Richard, who had arrived unannounced, drunk and aggressive. Catherine had fought him off, locked him out, but Emma had already been hurt. And then Catherine made a choice. She took Emma to the basement, the one place in the house with no windows, no way for Richard to see inside, and she stayed there with her daughter, protecting her, even as her own fear paralyzed her. When the police arrived, Catherine thought it was Richard who had called them. She thought he had finally made good on his threats. That's why she hesitated. That's why she seemed terrified. But it wasn't Richard who called. It was Emma. Hidden in her pocket was an old cell phone, one Catherine had given her for emergencies. Emma had dialed 911 herself, whispering the address before her mother could stop her. She hadn't called for herself. She had called to save her mother. The revelation that changed everything. Mark sat with Catherine in the quiet of the police station. Richard Voss had been arrested. Restraining orders were filed. Emma was safe, recovering in the hospital with her leg properly treated. "You could have told us," Mark said softly. "You didn't have to face this alone." Catherine looked down at her hands. "I thought I had no choice. I thought if I spoke up, I'd lose her." He said no one would believe me. That I was just a struggling single mother, and he was a respected man. "But Emma believed in you," Mark said. "Even when you couldn't believe in yourself." Catherine's tears fell freely now. "She saved me. My little girl saved me." Mark nodded. "And you saved her too. By staying with her. By never leaving her side, even when you were terrified. That's love, Mrs. Mercer. That's the kind of courage that doesn't need words. The lesson that lasts." Weeks later, Mark visited Catherine and Emma at their new apartment, smaller, simpler, but filled with something the old house never had: peace. Emma was drawing at the kitchen table, her cast covered in colorful signatures from her classmates. Catherine was making tea, humming softly. "Detective," Catherine said, smiling for the first time since he'd met her. "Thank you for believing us." Mark shook his head. "You did the hard part. You survived. And now, you get to live." As he left, he thought about the lesson this case had taught him, one he'd carry forever. Sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is not fight the storm alone, but reach out, speak up, and trust that someone will listen. Silence protects no one, but truth builds towers where broken things once lay. And from those towers, we can finally see the light.